Alright, Sarah, first and foremost, thank you very much for your time yesterday. What follows here is your follow-up to your assessment. I've taken some time to go through some of the videos. I've put some coaching notes over the top of them. I've let some of it just play through because there was some good value there as well. Predominantly, what we were interested in was what it was you wanted to achieve. Your goals are to be more athletic, for things to be a little bit easier, and particularly to reduce that low back pain. So that is what I screened for. We looked at balancing the hips, we looked at our ankles, and then we looked at your motor control in hinging and squatting. We saw some good patterns, but we also saw some main opportunities, which are going to be discussed as we go through. I'll wrap this up with a summary and talk about those action items and next steps. Enjoy the video. Start with our ankle dorsiflexion here. We're looking for 3 to 5 inches on either side. Our left foot, we had about 2.5 inches before the heel came up. Our right was where the main opportunity was, about bang on 2 inches there, so some work to do for sure. So here's our first squat. This was without any coaching. Your weight's kind of falling back towards your heels, the toes are lifting up, the ankles are collapsing, and we're very stiff and stuck. So I'm going to talk to you about the importance of ankles. About our squat requires ankle dorsiflexion, knee flexion, and hip flexion. It's 3 things. So if my ankles get stuck, I gotta go somewhere else, I gotta find more flexion somewhere else, which is... So with our hands-on coaching here, the aim of the game was to get you to keep your weight slightly forward and to stop you falling behind yourself. You can see my top hand is encouraging your chest forward, while my bottom hand is guiding the hip back. We've created some space and external rotation with the hips by pushing the knees out to the side, and we're using those hands forward as a counterbalance. A big thing to focus on for you here is not letting your knees shift back behind your ankles. That will start that process of falling the weight back into the heels, which is the opposite of where we want to go. Let's keep that head forward over the toes as much as we possibly can. So now we can see a big change in your positioning. Your knees are traveling further forward over the toes, the head's over the toes, the back's nice and flat. We've got a neutral spine. And our big opportunity here to increase our depth is just getting those hips to sink a little bit lower with the knees going forward. Next up, we had our ATG split squat. Now this is a different kind of exercise. We covered a couple of lungy type ones, but this one in particular is important. This is a good assessment of our hip flexors on the trailing leg, which are super important for running and hip extension. And then it's also a good assessment of our control on that front leg. What we're going to see as we watch the video is that you have a tendency for the front leg, the ankle collapses, the knee comes inside the hip, and then the inside hip rotates away from the wall. Essentially, we've got a little bit of internal rotation happening when we want external rotation. So the camera's going to flip round in a second and show you the different view, and it'll be much more obvious. So the key here is to keep the shoulder stacked over the hip. We're trying to move the hips in a straight line forward, pushing the front knee as far over the toes as we possibly can. So watch your right foot here. The knee caves in, the ankle collapses, and the hips twist and fold forward, and it's really hard for you to get up and down from this position. We give the wall for a little bit of assistance. We cue you to get your weight over your toes a little bit more, and then externally rotate through that front foot so we pick up the foot arch. You'll see in a second how it's a much stronger and more stable position, and you're able to get back up from the bottom there. Next up was the hip hinge, and here the biggest opportunity is to reduce tension and tightness in the posterior chain, so the calves, the hamstrings and the low back. You can see that you are shifting your weight back from your ankles. Your knees move behind the ankles. That takes the weight out of the toes. Now yes, we want the weight to transition a little bit more to the posterior chain, but that's going to limit your motion and cause your hamstrings to tighten before they should do. Last up here, or I guess first up in the order that we did them, but last video to look at was our seated good morning exercise. This is going to be a real key exercise for you. We had some opportunities with pelvis alignment, with stability and tightness into the upper back, but the whole concept with this exercise is to teach you how to make space. We talked about how the shoulders and the hips are linked together by the rib cage. If we compress that rib cage, we run out of space. So our whole focus is to lengthen without reaching up through the chest, and then keep the abdominals tight as you fold forward to touch the bench, and we saw good progress for sure. Okay, so there we have it. In summary, our main opportunities looking at the lower body are going to be our ankle dorsiflexion. We want to get that from the 2-inch range to a minimum of 3, ideally closer to 5. We also want to find some balance between the length and strength on the hip flexors on both sides, and then get that right glute med firing and active. We know that's important because we can see the ankle collapsing when we lunge forward. Keeping everything in a nice straight line will allow you to build more strength and stability and ultimately reduce pain. As far as the hip hinge goes, we've got some work to do in the low back, the groin, and some of the side bending muscles. You're just tight because you've not used those for a long time. The internally rotated shoulder position steals space in the pelvis for you, so teaching us to get the shoulders up and back, so strengthening the upper back will be vital as part of that process as well. So that's going to be our attack. For the lower body, it's ankles and hip flexors. For the upper body, we're looking at scapular position and then core alignment. I'd love to see you twice a week if we possibly can. With that, we can throw in the true coach. If we can only make one session work, that's no problem. We'll give you some homework to follow through on. Our main trackers for progress will be getting those split squats all the way to the floor, the ankles moving nicely, and then reduction in low back pain, because I want you to measure this through everyday activities. Looking forward to working with you, and thanks for your time.